Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this video about the principles that underpin Vedic astrology, including the origin of astrology, what it's really for, and also some really powerful frameworks in how astrology is related to other very important modern sciences. Now, I'm doing this in preparation for my certification course in September of this year, and I have several more brand new videos that will be quite extensive, brand new video trainings that I'm going to be doing, and you can sign up for those by just clicking the link below this video, and you can get those trainings. Again, this is being done in anticipation of my certification course. You know, for the last several years, hundreds of people have taken my course. It's a 10-month course, levels 1 and level 2, and they have really excelled in Vedic astrology as a result. And what it's really doing is organizing all of the information that you've been gathering and putting it into a structure, organizing those important principles and frameworks so that you can actually use it and do astrology with absolute consistency, and so you can be absolutely certain of what you're saying and what you're looking at when you're doing astrology. And again, I'm going to be talking about several of these frameworks and sort of busting several of the myths, especially that we now have in astrology, the sort of complexity myths and other ones through the series, and you'll really grow as an astrologer and being able to use astrology yourself as a result. So I'm just going to get right into this and discuss the origin of astrology. This is one of the things that most people are very weak on. They start to do astrology or think they know what it is, or they start approaching it and they don't even really understand what they're looking at. Like, what is the purpose of it? Why is it here? How did it start? What's the real meaning behind it? So literally, you can see on your screen now, I have right from Brad Parashar Horasastra, chapter 2, it says, the unborn Lord has many incarnations. He's incarnated as the 9 planets to bestow on the living beings the results due to their karmas. He is Janardhan. He assumed the auspicious form of grahas to destroy the demons, the evil forces, and sustain the divine beings. And then continuing, the beings with more Jiva Atman, or are the mortal beings. The high degree of Paramatmans from the grahas did incarnate as Ram, Krishna, etc. After completing the mission, the Paramatmansas of the respective grahas again merge in the grahas, which means these Vishnu avatars, or these divine beings like Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, incarnate as one of the planets themselves. They're incarnations of the planets. Then when they're done their work, they merge back into the grahas themselves. That includes like Narasimha, Matsya, and the other Vishnu avatars. Then continuing, it says the Jivatma portions from the grahas take births as human beings and live their lives according to their karmas, and again merge in the grahas. So this means the rest of us, the Jiva Atmans, the rest of us, take birth as human beings and live our lives according to our karma, which again emanates from the planets, and then we merge back into the planets after our death, after the death of this form. So then it says that, and at the time of great destruction, the grahas as well merge in Lord Vishnu. So the planets themselves are the incarnations of Lord Vishnu, the visible form of Lord Vishnu. That's what the planets are. So understand, when you talk about Vishnu and Krishna and all of this, we're talking about their literal emanation and incarnation is as the planets, the 9 grahas. So continuing, it says, the one who knows of all these will become versed in the knowledge of the past, present, and future. Without a knowledge of Jyotish, these cannot be known. Hence, everyone should have a knowledge of Jyotish, particularly the Brahmin. The one who, devoid of the knowledge of Jyotish, blames this Vedic science will go to the hell called Raurava and be reborn blind. Now, it says that particularly the Brahmin should know Jyotish. Now, you might say, well, I'm not a Brahmin, I'm not a priest. But Brahmins aren't priests. The Brahmins were the educated people. They were Brahmins, the teachers, the priests, yes, but also the astrologers, the doctors. They were the Brahmins. And all of the educated people in ancient India learned Jyotish as well as many of the other Vedic sciences. And it says, the one who, devoid of the knowledge of Jyotish, blames this Vedic science will go to a hell called Raurava and be reborn blind. So it says everyone should know Jyotish. Now that means have a knowledge of it and a functioning knowledge. Because if you're devoid of the knowledge, but you blame Jyotish, which I see a lot of people doing, by the way, then you go to the hell called Raurava and will be reborn blind. So this means gathering little information here and there and then blaming Jyotish for the problems when you don't understand the nature of karma, you don't understand how astrology actually works, is said to be something that you shouldn't do, for lack of a better way to put it. So you are meant to know Jyotish and not just get little, sort of tidbits here and there and then focus on your chart and figure things out and make these bad proclamations about life and yourself based on this limited knowledge. You're meant to know it and actually know how it works, why it works, and its divine connection to Lord Vishnu and the sastras and your soul and karma and all the divine frameworks that are connected with Jyotish. That's what it's meant to be. That's what it is. It's a divine science that you are meant to know. And the planets are the visible form of Lord Vishnu, who is, for all intents and purposes, the Indian word for God. So astrology is a divine science that shows how the universe as God is giving you the experiences that you need to have to learn what you need to learn. It's nothing short of that miraculous type of science. Now the origin of Vedic astrology, again, starts with this, and you remember it said he is Janardhan, which is the incarnation of Lord Vishnu as the Grahas, is called Janardhan, which is he who destroys Janma, or birth, brought about by avidya, ignorance, and bestows on the worshipper the awareness of his identity with the Lord. That's what the incarnation of Lord Vishnu as Janardhana means. And again, this is the term that the Rishi Parashara gives to Lord Vishnu as the 9 Grahas. He is Janardhan. So as the 9 Grahas, Lord Vishnu is the one who destroys birth, which means destroys your incarnation brought about by ignorance. Now there are other kinds of incarnations that are not brought about by ignorance. You may choose to be born, like the Vishnu avatars, where you remember being born and you remember taking birth. If you didn't remember doing it, then it didn't come of your will, it came of your ignorance. You were pulled by the Grahas to come here to experience the fruits of your actions and your karma. So there's a lot of New Age philosophies around, my soul chose to come here, so my birth chart is perfect, and all these kind of New Age things we sort of pump ourselves with. Your chart is perfect for what you came here to learn. But if you didn't remember choosing it, don't play into all this New Age gobbledygook about, I chose the perfect time. If you didn't remember choosing it, just like you didn't remember choosing anything, then you didn't choose it. You didn't choose it. It was chosen at the perfect time by Lord Vishnu, or God, as the dispenser of our karmas and the one who gives us exactly what we need, exactly when we need it. Now we can look at this in a sacred, divine sense when we look at the enormity of time and the ancient history of Earth, which is 4.5 billion years, and yet human beings and life has only really been here for the last couple hundred thousand. So 4.5 billion years is the age of our solar system. 100,000 years is how long there have been humanoids on Earth. 100 to 200,000 years. Let's just say 100,000 because, you may call them humanoids 200,000 years ago, but they were very primitive humanoids. So to illustrate 100,000 years relative to 4.5 billion years, if you were to stack 100 450-page books, one on top of the other, to represent the age of our solar system, which is 4.5 billion years, the age of humanoids, 100,000 years, would be the last page in that stack. So basically, about 8 feet of books, the last 100,000 years would be the last page. So the earliest records of the Vedic, Egyptian, and Sumerian people dated to perhaps 3000 BC would be 1/20th of that last page. Perhaps the last sentence or two. Our modern world, like the last 100 years or so, would be maybe 1/50th of that, maybe the last word on the page. Your lifetime, the D in the end. So you have to understand that when we talk about astrology, it tends to be very abstract. And all this stuff about God and Lord Vishnu and the planets, these big rocks moving around up there, you have to understand what we see in our physical universe is emulated by this same concept. Because this 4.5 billion years, these planets were moving in their orbits with pretty much nothing there. And it's only the last, like, couple 100,000 years that we've had humans. Before that, the last 500 million years, we started to see life on Earth, called the Cambrian explosion. But that was after 9/10 of the time had passed. So we should see this timeline as analogous to how our body, mind, and psyche were formed and how they operate. Our body, mind, and life on Earth is embedded with the intelligence of the entire cosmos. And this intelligence reaches back into the mist of time through eons of patient forbearance. And yeah, we can even do things like destroy our body. This universe that created us implanted its genius everywhere and in everything. As such, we are remarkably durable and well built. Our bodies can withstand extreme levels of trauma and abuse due to the redundant genius built into every cell, forged over 4.5 billion years. So, the higher levels of mind are supported by layers of more primal brains, backup systems, and brilliance down to the cellular level. Each cell contains the wisdom of the entire organism, independent yet connected, simultaneously magical and practical. So it's remarkable. This is why not only does your body work so amazingly, but your karma unfolds because the planets are not just these rocks moving around up there. They're the incarnations of Lord Vishnu that have been in their orbits for billions of years, creating the absolute perfect synastry and rhythm of life. You realize this Earth you're sitting on right now is turning 1,000 miles an hour at its equator, and it's going around the sun at almost 70,000 miles right now. This is how the place you inhabit is so connected to the perfection of life. And again, we tend to look at the planets as these rocks moving around. This is one of the reasons why people have such a hard time with astrology and understanding that astrology is not something up there. The planets aren't something up there doing something to you down here. They have created everything. And just like you're not some hunk of meat walking around, the planets aren't just these rocks moving around. They're the forces of the universe that have been here for billions of years. So, again, where did this come? God, some might say. And if there's any need to call anything God, it would certainly have to include the sun and moon as the main agents of their work. Our bodies, minds, and spirits are the product of 4.5 billion years of love and dedication from the sun, moon, and the other planets. So yes, the planets are referred to as gods for that reason. What else is a god but something that creates something? Like if you write a book or you write a novel, you're the god of that thing. You created it. You know everything about it. It's your creation. But of course the things that we create are subject to time, space, decay. The things that God creates are eternal, and that means the eternal within you. So your physical karma that is played out in this world of consequence, in this world of time, which astrology measures time and consequence, is the physical representation of your spiritual essence, which is beyond time. That's who Lord Vishnu is, beyond just the physical. That's why it says even at the end of the Great Dissolution, the grahas themselves merge back into Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the great creator beyond time and form. But he has incarnated through form in order to sustain the living beings as the form of the 9 planets. So this is really miraculous, and this is a very Eastern way to approach things, but we also live in a Western world of sciences and powerful sciences, and recently I've been doing a lot of work bringing Vedic astrology into the worlds of neuroscience and quantum mechanics, and it's quite remarkable how Western sciences, which really these are the pinnacle of the Western sciences now, modern neuroscience shows exactly how the brain works and exactly how we process and cognize existence through our brain. And again, this is the same as our karma, because our karma first arrives in the form of ideas. Karma only penetrates to the level of the mind. Then the moment is when we take action based on our tendencies. But you have to realize that tendencies based on the karma is not a determination of the action in the moment or the level of consciousness within the circumstances. And modern neuroscience shows us exactly how the brain works and exactly how we come to understand our karma on the psychological level. If we migrate Western concepts into the Eastern, then our karma, our brain was formed by our karma. And then when we take action, it arranges the world based on what we would call the quantum mechanics model, because quantum mechanics shows how what starts as light becomes a wave or a particle based on what we do in the moment. And these are things I'm also going to discuss in this video. So when we start to practice Vedic astrology and we look at the planets as gods or forces, we have many of these universal principles that underpin all of the Vedic sciences. For instance, the three gunas, which relate to body, mind, and spirit, are existent in astrology as qualities of the planets and as the signs. And we will see how those things correlate also to the three brains. Because as you see here in this slide I have, modern neuroscience asserts that we actually have three brains, that ones that are built right on top of each other. We have the reptile brain, which is what keeps your heart beating, keeps your lungs operating, and actually runs your entire body. You know, your body is incredibly wise. It knows exactly what to do with all the food you eat. You don't have to worry about breathing. You don't have to worry about making sure your heart is beating. Your body just takes care of that. And that's hardwired into the reptile brain. Hardwired for survival and instinct, protection. And then but then on top of that reptile brain, we have a mammal brain, which is related to nurturing and having connections with others. And it's very much about mammals. Like when you see the way mammals act, they're very much in their communities, and they're very much about nurturing and things like that. But then we also have a human brain, or a conceptual brain, which has to do with abstract thinking, beliefs, creating ourself. Because mammals, like a chimpanzee or a dog, even though they're beautiful and they have their own wisdom, they don't theorize about the nature of existence, and they don't try to grow and evolve toward their highest self. They're pretty much trapped in that destiny as a mammal. And their behaviors are very much mammal behaviors. But human beings, we have a conceptual mind that's also related to abstract beliefs and thinking and whatnot. And so, what's very interesting is all of these brains are not created equal. One of the reasons why you're held back in your life and you don't advance and excel in the things that you want to advance and excel in is because you're much more motivated by fear, which is the primal reptile brain, than you are by belief and hope for the future. Because you may hope for something for the future, but if you don't have enough to eat, or you're afraid you're going to, get killed, then you're going to be held back. And so, research has shown that we're up to 200% more motivated to avoid pain than we are to experience pleasure. So the inner reptile and the inner ape are much more powerful than we imagine. They're kind of like internal puppeteers that have reached up into our higher human self, into our higher human brain, and is really controlling us from beyond. And so the way to really look at this is that, for instance, you may have a lot of, hopes about the future. Let's say you even would, you imagine one day that you could be an astrologer. You think, oh, that would be great. This is that higher human conceptual person that is thinking in the future about how inspired they could be to really accomplish something, bigger than themselves. But what would your friends and family say? This is the mammal brain saying, but that's not very sensible. What would your father say? What would your mother say? What would your friends say that you want to be an astrologer? And then there's the whole thing about money. Well, you can't earn a living at that, so you're afraid. You're afraid to step out because of these reptile and mammal concerns. So again, none of those things are true, by the way. There's just as rational that you could do something like be an astrologer as you could do anything else. Especially if you're really driven and motivated and you get trained, you can do it like you could do anything else, especially in this modern world. But we stop ourselves because it's not sensible, and our peer group might think it's kind of crazy, and we're afraid of the money. We're afraid that we can't make a living at it. So when we look at the planets and astrology through the same matrix of the reptile brains and the mammal brain and the human brain, we can directly map that over to what's called the three gunas, which are, basically related to that fight or flight, symptom in the reptile brain that has to do with Saturn and Mars. So Saturn is about fear and control, and Mars is about anger and discipline. So again, these things protect us and keep us alive. And on the primal level, Mars is like that heartbeat, like that primal pulse in your body. And Saturn is that thing that makes it happen for a long time. Your heart's not just beating right now, it beats for a long time. Your body doesn't just digest all this food and have all this energy right now, it does it for a long time. So Saturn is what allows us to survive for a long time. Mars is what keeps us, animated in the moment. But the very primitive, instinctive energies, that's why we don't give up our fear and anger very easily. And that's why they have a lot of control over our mind on those, from those deeper levels. That's why, like I just said, we're often controlled by our deeper reptile brain. Because if we don't have enough money, we're not going to, or if we don't think we have enough money, we're not going to change careers. Then we have that mammal brain, which is about communion. And that's related to the Rajasic planets of Venus and Mercury. So these Rajasic planets, Venus and Mercury, have to do with happiness, which is Venus, and enjoyment and pleasure, and then details, which is Mercury. You see, even though as human beings we're very sophisticated in the way we communicate, really the whole sort of communication thing really starts to become sophisticated at the mammal level, where they have a lot of social hierarchy, and a lot of that comes from reading cues, reading body language, recognizing details, learning how to be skilled in a group. All this has to do with Mercury and Venus stuff. Of course, Venus is also the planet of sex, pleasure, mutual respect. These are very Rajasic, and they're very much about the mammal brain. So when you see mammals interacting, that's very much a Rajasic expression, and it's the same with you. The main thing that makes your romantic relationships work and all of your personal relationships work have to do with Venus and Mercury, much more so than the other planets. Much more so. And I'm talking about mutual relationships, like romantic relationships, which are Rajasic, and all other kind of social interactions, with the exception of children and parents, because that's a Sattvic relationship related to the sun and the moon. Sattvic energy is about selflessness, selfless love, higher principles, things where that's not that interaction, but it's actually about selfless giving. Our soul just wants to evolve, and in it, it's its own reward. So the sun and moon are about the power of the self, which is the sun. Moon is the power of love, and Jupiter is details, and Jupiter is meaning, higher purpose. So we can look at it this way too. The reptile brain and the Tamasic planets are primarily interested in self-preservation. And these are also energies we're supposed to keep to ourselves. We're supposed to keep our fear and anger to ourselves, not use them to control others or destroy them, but destroy our own weakness. So we're supposed to keep the Tamasic planets to ourselves. We're supposed to share evenly Venus and Mercury, which are the Rajasic planets. Our relationships with other adults benefit because we share, not because I get more than you, or not because I'm trying to be your mommy or your daddy either, which are the Sattvic planets. With adults, it's about mutuality, mutual respect, listening to what the other one says, adjusting, being flexible, Venus and Mercury stuff. So this is what the Rajasic energy is about, and the Sattvic energy is about just giving. We're just supposed to give that thing. We're not supposed to keep it for ourselves. We're not supposed to keep the power to ourselves. We're not supposed to keep our love to ourselves. We're supposed to give it. The selfless love. Not the transactional Venus love, but the selfless love of the moon. The moon is the part of us that just loves everything selflessly. The sun is the part of us that just gives our power. And nothing feels better when we just give our power. Nothing feels better when we just give love with nothing in return. And Jupiter is the things that inspire us. We're supposed to give those teachings. We're supposed to give that, not keep it to ourselves. So these are big, this is a big principle, and one of the biggest ways we screw up is instead of holding on to the fear and anger for ourselves, which is hard to do, we dump that on people. We dump our fear and anger on people. We want to keep all the good stuff for ourselves. We want to keep the pleasure and happiness to ourselves, which is Venus. We want people to understand us, which is Mercury. We're not flexible. We're not mutual in that. And we want to keep the power to ourselves. We want to keep the love. We want to get the power, get the love, and be inspired by the teachings rather than giving that stuff. So you can look in your life at the times when you've really felt most in flow with yourself. It's when you've been giving selflessly with no expectation of reward. That's why our relationship with children are so powerful, because we naturally do that with children. And also with pets and other beings that we love selflessly. But there's a lot of inner conflicts that come about. And I did a whole series, I did a whole course on this called Quantum Vedic Astrology, where I talked about the inner conflicts that come within our brain, within these brains when planets get together in the natal chart. And I'm going to give a few examples here. But I just gave one example, the personal growth challenge, one of the inner conflicts that come, like for instance when planets join in the chart, or even when they go in signs that have a different guna. It creates an inner conflict. So it's very powerful to understand astrology and understanding that the level of karma in our mind is constantly being subjected to these inner conflicts. And this is where all of our life energy gets wasted. All your life energy gets wasted because of these inner conflicts you have between these three brains, and it's shown by the it's shown by the gunas of the planets. Trust me, I've been researching this a long time. So when you see planets that are joined that are different gunas, then you need to look in the sign they're in to see which one is more in its environment and which one is getting really sacrificed, and the frustration that comes as a result. It's very powerful. So we can use an example, let's say, personal growth challenge. You want to do more fulfilling work, like astrologer or a counselor, but your friends and family think you're a little kooky, right? They see you a certain way, and on a deeper level, there's fear you won't be able to support yourself or make enough money to survive, so you stay stuck. And it remains a dream. The dream is that sattvic part of you, that part of you that can dream, that Jupiter dream. One day I can do this. Then you start to tell your friends and family, which again is Rajasic, Mercury, Venus stuff, and what comes back to them, what they say is, well, that's not sensible, that's not practical, da-da-da-da, da-da-da. That's what they say. And then you think, well, maybe you're right, it's not sensible and practical. How can I support myself? How can I make enough money? And there's also a fear of being ostracized. Because in your mammal brain, there's part of you that realizes that if all your friends and family think you're an idiot, you might get outcast. And there was a time in your mammal heritage where that meant death. So we're very leery about having everybody around us disapprove of what we do. So there's a lot to be said for that social acceptance. So again, like you can see these brains interfering, right? And not supporting your growth. And then there's other things like there's inner conflicts just within the roles that we have to play. Like for instance, most interactions with others necessitates that we play many roles, often simultaneously. We have to, we play many roles simultaneously. This confuses us as the three brains have different needs and motivations. Like for instance, a parent-child relationship that's evolving. So the parent-child relationship is one that evolves. Because at first the child is completely helpless and the parent has to do everything for them. Right? Total selfless love. But as the child starts to grow, the parent has to evaluate their level of maturity and start to adjust. And if the parent keeps trying to mommy the child, it's not going to work. Right? The parent-child relationship evolves into one of mutuality, of mutual respect, which is the more Rajasic brain. You have to realize these gunas, none is better than the other. They're exactly what they're supposed to be. The problem is when we misuse them and when we misunderstand them. And most people really misunderstand these things. Horrifically, by the way. Saturn and Mars, they're the good ones. Or I'm sorry, they're the bad ones. Saturn and Mars, bad ones. Venus, good one. Mercury, good one. Jupiter, good one. They're all good. They do exactly what they do. The problem is when we don't understand what that thing is they're doing, and when we don't understand the power in it, why it's happening, because then we don't know how to transform it. This is all stuff I talk about at length in my certification course, and my certification students get this drilled into them for months and months. And by the end of it, they really not only understand astrology, but they understand life and why life is working the way it is. So these inner conflicts are huge in untangling why you're stuck. So the boss-employee relationship, that's a tricky one. Because the boss has to have the direction, he needs to be in charge, but he also has to listen to the person and evolve with their needs. So he has a lot of different roles. He has to have the vision of the company, which is sattvic, but he also, as far as the boss goes, he needs to have the vision for the company, which is sattvic. He also needs to protect it from danger. He also needs to cultivate and nurture a sort of community environment. So when you're a boss and you have employees, it's using different parts of your brain at different times. So understanding what the role is in the moment is important. And then, intimate partners, like your romantic partners, and their changing needs. There's part of you that has to love them selflessly because there's part of them that has nothing to do with being your partner. You want to protect them. It's like also the tamasic part. You have to be flexible with them. You have to also hold space for them to evolve in ways that have nothing to do with you. So again, there are different parts of our brain. There are different roles that we have. So change only happens when all three brains are involved. When the conceptual or the human connects with the pleasurable mammal and the visceral reptile, things change. And that's the only way they change. All three brains have to be aligned for something to change. So, for instance, even I know a lot of people listen to my videos, right? They're inspired. They're like, wow, that's great, that's great. And then they don't do anything about it. And they say, oh, I'd like to, but blah, 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 whatever it is. It's fine, really, by the way, that's fine. But there are those who actually something shifts in them, something changes, and they actually do something about it. Because it's not just this conceptual idea about astrology hits them, but then it connects with the pleasurable mammal part of them. And where they say, you know what? I can do this. I want to do this. And the people around me, if they don't understand why I want to do this, the heck with them. And I'm going to spend the money on it, and I know I'm going to get a lot out of it, whether I become an astrologer or not, because everyone is supposed to know this. And I want to know this, and I want to integrate this into my life and have it be in my DNA. And it's not until all of those things change that, for instance, listening to me doing this actually makes someone do something, and real change happens. Until then, there could be inner conflicts. Like a person maybe wants to do astrology, they're interested, like I just said. But, if I were to actually take a course, or I don't need to do that, I'll just grab a little information here and there, and a little information here and there, and that's good enough. They're not really looking at the fact that they're kind of stuck, because this is what a Rajasic energy is. It's often stuck. So rather than seeing it and having it go into that sort of bone level experiential, where they sacrifice and make a commitment, which is Saturn stuff, and are willing to destroy the places where they're stuck, which is Mars, it stays in that kind of level, as an example. So change only happens when all three brains are involved. And we have to work from the bottom up to affect this change in our life. We have to first handle our inner reptile and stop inflicting it on people, and in particular on ourselves. Meaning that this inner reptile is the main one that's preventing you from moving forward in your life, in all areas. And it's based on the past. It's based on the dead voice. It's based on your conditioning. Based on these fears of things that happened to you when you were like 5 years old or 10 years old, or you were beaten up on the playground, or all of these things lording over you. Afraid of making a mistake, afraid of looking foolish, afraid of pursuing your passion. Again, all of these dreams we have are up there in the sattvic level. This is why it's very abstract to have these dreams, mainly Jupiterian. They're up there in the abstract level, and yet you don't do anything about them because you're compelled by this fear. Fear of looking stupid, fear of making a mistake, fear of having people you know think you're stupid or foolish, fear of not having enough money or whatever it is. You know, fear of changing into something that's not a certainty, something that's not known. And these fears lord over us. So we have to handle that inner reptile first. Stop inflicting them on ourselves and stop inflicting them on others as well. So in astrology charts, we see the inner conflicts between the three brains as the planets join or aspect each other. We also see the effects of the sign guna on the planet, natural relationship between the planets. So here's an example of someone, you know, and it's through aspect and through the signs they're in and the gunas they rule. You can see, like Moon Mercury person, or this person has Moon Mercury. It's a battle between their feelings and their thoughts. Feelings are, you know, feelings of the moon are sattvic. They're just wanting to give love. The moon just wants to connect with others through the heart, like a mother with a child, like us with our pets, like just the feelings we have. Mercury is thoughts, rajasic thoughts. What does it mean? Ideas, ideas, ideas. Always making a story out of the feelings. So it creates an inner conflict. Their feelings become very intellectual, and their thoughts and speech become very emotional. They're confusing, they ramble on, they hard to get them to stop talking when you need to communicate something clear, like with other people. They get all emotional and then you don't understand what they're talking about, right? So this is an inner conflict between the brains. And again, feelings are very, you know, the moon is very, you know, very innocent and simple, and it's not well thought out. So this frustrates the Mercury part of them, who wants to make sense, wants to have other people respect and appreciate what they say. Yet, what they say is often very garbled, at least at times. So Sun and Venus. So the Sun is like the true power, and Venus is desire. So this is very common. People are like, well, a lot of people have that. That's right. And a lot of people sacrifice their true power for a piece of candy and for desires in the moment, right? And this person has it very close, so the conjunction is actually very close. But the Sun is the true power, and Venus is enjoyment and attention we get from others and those kinds of things. Venus, Sun, the influence of Venus on the Sun can really have us sacrifice giving our power to wanting to receive attention and think that there's power in that. It's very common, of course. You're like, well, a lot of people have it. That's right. And how many people do that? A lot of people do it. Now, on a deeper level, you have to look and see the sign that the planets are in. So, for instance, with this Sun-Venus, they're in Sagittarius. Now, the Sun is a sattvic planet. Sagittarius is a sattvic sign. So Venus is the one that's getting it the worst here, which means the rajasic quality of Venus to be able to give and take, gets really compromised by this nature of the Sun, which is going to insist on being powerful and also be very kind of judgmental about it. Because judgment is a sattvic thing. We have to judge what's right or wrong, but it's abstract. Judgments are abstract. We shouldn't judge people. And again, Venus and Mercury are the rajasic planets that show us how to deal with people. We can judge what the people do and whether or not we want what that person does in our life. But when we start to judge the person, we're not anyone's judge. Don't judge a person and say, he's this way. How do you know? You're already a certain way, so you're bringing your judgment. You can say, you look at the behavior, judge the behavior and say, you know what, I don't want that in my life. And there's a big distinction, by the way. Big distinction. One is being judgmental about people. We're supposed to be judgmental about concepts and principles that we want. When we're judgmental about people, then we're really missing the point. Because people are dynamic and they're complex and they're just interacting with us in a way, and we're often wrong when we judge people. So anyway, this can show where Venus, which is tolerant of people and tolerant of our differences, gets really harmed in this sense. And it also can show where something like sex becomes power, and all kinds of things with Venus getting getting compromised. So then we also have a Saturn-Jupiter aspect here. And again, hope and fear. And Saturn aspected by Jupiter, it can bring some hope into Saturn sort of practicality. But it can also make them want to rise above the work, not face the work, for instance. And, Saturn's influence on Jupiter can bring those hopes down to earth, make it so they lack a certain amount of hope, for instance. And, of course, you look at dignities and stuff as well. This is a debilitated Saturn, and Jupiter in this case is also not so strong. So those are other considerations. But, this is a quick lesson on these inner conflicts and how this comes down and filters down on the brain level. And how important it is to understand that you're reading the person's brain, you're reading their mind. And, in my certification course, again, I talk about these gunas in great length. And in fact, even now, one of the bonuses that you get when you get my certification course is an entire course I taught on quantum. It's called Quantum Vedic Astrology, where it's a whole 10-hour course on Vedic Astrology, Neuroscience, and quantum mechanics. It's really powerful. People got a lot out of it. So I hope you like this quick introduction. Go ahead and give your name and email address, and you'll see the next part of this video where I talk about what's called the RAS, or the reticular activating system. This shows how your attention is focused from these three brains. I'm also going to talk about what's called myelination, which shows the deep grooves in your mind and how it actually happens scientifically in your brain. It's called myelination, and it shows your samskaras, the direct correlation between myelination and your brain and your deep karmic tendencies and the samskaras from our past lives and karma. And I'm also going to talk about neuroscience and how we bring this whole sort of matrix into the world and create something out of nothing. Fascinating stuff. Now, if you're seeing this on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, you won't get that video unless you register, because this is only going to be for people that are on my list, because I have to do some special things for them. And again, once you join that list, also you'll get several more intense trainings like this. They're not, I'm not going to put them all on Facebook or YouTube because I like to give benefit to people that actually join the list and get other benefits as well, like being getting announcements for readings and other things. So go ahead and click that link, and you'll get the rest of this video, and then some more in the series of these exclusive trainings as I get ready for the certification program in September this year. So thanks a lot.